Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my featured author of the month of March. She is award winning and best selling author, no other than Miss Angela Henry.
Hi, Daniel.
Welcome to Book 101 again for the second time around, Miss Angela. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Well, I'm Angela Henry, and I write mysteries, thrillers, and urban fantasy. My most recent book is The Family Lies, which is a twisty domestic thriller, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me again, Daniel.
Yes, thank you so much for being part on Book 101 Review. So, Miss Angela, what is the inspiration behind your first book? And did you ever imagine that would become a bestseller?
Okay, now when you say my first book came out 20 years ago. So are you talking about my first book or just my very first book for twenty years ago?
Either of the two.
Okay.
I can
Well, my
accept it.
my very first book came out in 2005. So this year marks my 20th anniversary as a published author. And the reason why I wrote it is because I love mysteries, but I wasn't really seeing mysteries with people featuring people that look like me, people of color, Black people, African American. So I decided that I wanted to contribute to that genre, and I wrote my first book, which is called "The Company You Keep," which features an African American teacher who solves crimes in her small town. So that was the inspiration behind my very first book.
Miss Angela Henry, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. Hoping for more and more and more empowering books to come. What do you think sets apart award winning and best selling authors from others?
I think it can be a lot of things. There are a lot of genres that are more popular than others, like say romance tends to sell very well. Thrillers tend to sell very well. Um, so I think it depends on what you write in and what resonates with the readers, because it can be very well written book. Um, Marketing is also a big deal because if readers don't know about your books, no one's going to buy them and they're not going to be best selling. So marketing, writing in a popular genre, and just connecting with their readers, I think set best-selling and award-winning authors apart.
Very well said, Miss Angela. How did you develop your unique writing style and voice?
I tend to write. I once had one of my books described as chatty first person because I strictly write. I write. My earlier books are mostly written in first person, but my more recent books are written in multiple point of view that go back and forth from first person to third. And I think that's kind of my style. I think I excel at first person narration for my books. That's what I'm kind of known for.
That's be awesome. So, what is the most important element of a book that captures both critics and readers?
That's kind of a hard question because, it's so subjective. And, there have been books that I have really loved that others did not care for, and vice versa. So every reader is bringing their own lived experience to what they read. So, you may have someone that picks up a book that just triggers something traumatic that happened to them, and, they just can't really, they may not like it, and others may embrace it because it inspires them. It just all depends. It's just so subjective. I can't really say one thing or the other. But I think the books that really do well have a combination of what I talked about earlier. They're grabbing the reader, and then they also have a good marketing push.
Certainly. So let's talk about awards and recognition. How did it feel to win your first literary award?
It felt amazing. The first award I ever won, there was a popular African American magazine here in the States called Ebony Magazine, and I entered a short story in that. They had a literary award competition. They used to have it every year. I don't think they've had it for a while now, but I entered a short story into that and won an honorable mention. And that felt amazing. I remember I was at work and one of the editors from the magazine called me and told me that my story had been chosen as one of the honorable mentions. They had a grand prize and then they had several honorable mentions, and I was one of them. And it felt amazing. And, to have your work recognized is always amazing.
Truly a validation. What impact did winning an award have on your career as an author?
Well, it was something that I could, when I was querying agents, literary agents, and publishers, it was something that an accomplishment, an achievement that I could put in my query letter to say that had won that award. So it was very positive for my author career. It gives you a lot of credibility since it was such a popular magazine.
Certainly. Do you believe awards are essential for an author's credibility or commercial success more important?
I don't think it's a requirement, but it's a perk. And I think I don't know if it necessarily, unless it's something like the Pulitzer or one of the major awards, I'm not sure it drives sales so much as awareness. Because I have seen authors that have won particular awards that I hadn't been aware of before. So then I went out and looked them up and read their books. So yeah, it can raise awareness, and awareness leads to sales. But I don't necessarily think that's the sole driver of sales would be awards.
So, how do literary awards influence book sales and readership?
Well, like I said, it drives awareness of the author. So, you got an author who's won an award, and a reader may not have heard of them, so they look them up, and they decide they want to uh, either purchase their book or request that their public library purchase the book, or their local bookstore. They'll go in, and if they don't have it on their shelves, they'll be like, "Hey, so and so won this award. Do you have any of their books?" And if they don't, they might order it. So it can drive sales in that way, I believe.
Certainly. Certainly. So let's talk about becoming a best-selling author, Miss Angela. What strategies did you use to reach a bestseller status?
Well, that was, I think, mostly down to my publisher. My publisher has certain marketing strategies that they use for all of their books. So, I write for a publisher called Storm Publishing, and they do a lot of pricing promotions that help push their books, into the bestsellers list. Also, I'm on TikTok. TikTok is huge for book sales and awareness. I've been on there for probably about 3 or 4 years now, and I don't have a huge following, but I do have a pretty engaged following. And when I post about my books, I do notice a bump in my sales. So I think
That's
social
awesome.
media, advertising, pricing strategies, they all work together to help boost books up the bestseller list.
Certainly. How important is branding for a book success?
I think it's important. I think readers need to like to know what they're getting when they, read a certain author. Like certain authors are known for, their rom-coms, uh, their thrillers. You hear certain author's name, and you're going to get, really spicy romance, or you're going to get um, a thriller with a big twist at the end. So yeah, branding is important for reader awareness, so readers will know what they're getting when they hear your name. But in the case of someone like me, I write in multiple genres. So it can be kind of hard if you're not writing in one genre. So
Certainly. So, Miss Angela, what role do book reviews and reader feedback play becoming a best-selling author?
I'm not sure how much reviews count towards sales. I think that's kind of open for debate about reviews. I mean, if I go on Amazon and I see a book has a ton of reviews, um, it all depends. Because, even if they're bad reviews, it piques my curiosity and I want to know if they're right. So I may read it if it's got bad reviews or not. So it's kind of up in the air with how influential reviews are for some readers. But I do know one thing. I kind of went through a phase where I stopped reading my reviews because I don't feel like reviews are for authors. Reviews are for other readers who are going to read the book. I've already written it, and usually by the time a book comes out, you got another one in the pipeline. You've moved on. So anything that a reader thinks might be wrong with your book, if you can't please everyone, you can't get wrapped up in bad reviews. You just have to keep moving, pushing forward. So reviews are for readers, not so much for writers.
True. So, how do you sustain long-term success as a best-selling author rather than just one-time hit?
That's hard. It's kind of hard to sustain. Um, I think every author has their books, especially if they have several books out. They have their books that have done well, and then maybe their next two or so haven't done as well. And it's always kind of, I think if you have a series, like I do have a series, it's kind of easier to do that momentum, you know, to from book to book. I think it's a little harder to sustain when you have standalone books because there's not a lot of crossover between, you wrote one thriller, you write it, it's about something completely different. Sometimes the readers will follow you to the next book and sometimes they don't. It's just all really just a crapshoot.
Certainly. Very well said, Miss Angela. Very well said. So let's go to the challenges and lessons. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced on your journey to literary success?
Well, my challenges are I am a huge procrastinator. So I'm a hybrid author and I have books that I self publish and then I have books that are published by a publisher. When I have an editor who's cracking the whip and giving me deadlines that I have to meet, I'm a much better and prolific writer because I write better under a deadline. I don't do as well with my writing when it's just me and I don't have a deadline and there's no one saying, "Hey, Angie, how's the book going?" You've got to, because when you have a contract, you have deadlines baked into your contract of when you have to turn in certain drafts of your novel. And I don't do well when I don't have that. So procrastination has been my biggest challenge.
So, have you ever faced rejection and how did you overcome it?
Oh, being a writer, it's nonstop rejection. Um, you just know that it's just
Mm,
part of being an author. You just know even the great authors, literary figures in history received a lot of rejection. And, if you realize that it's coming and, not everyone is going to like what you're doing, just because that person didn't like it doesn't mean that somebody else won't. You only need one yes, when you're trying to get a publisher. So,
yes.
just know that it's just a part of being an author and don't take it personally is probably another my biggest thing. They're not rejecting you. Your work may just not work for them.
True. Let it go, people. So, how do you handle pressure of meeting readers' expectation after achieving success?
Oh, I love meeting readers. Um, I like doing events and meeting my readers. I often do contests and stuff, to give back to my readers for their support because, I wouldn't be where I am now without the readers. So I love meeting my readers. I try and do a few author events every year. But yeah, that's the funnest part is meeting your readers. And, I've had emails where readers have told me, I had one recently where a woman told me she was going through something really hard with her family and read one of my books and it really enjoyed it and it kind of helped her through. And that just meant the world to me.
Inspiring.
Hmm.
So, Miss Angela, what advice would you give to aspiring authors who dream of winning awards and making bestseller lists?
I would say learn all you can about the publishing industry. I mean, there's a glut of information online. Find out how publishing works. One of the biggest lessons I learned when I was submitting to publishers is your book can be rejected for reasons that don't have anything to do with your writing. Um, if they have a book that did similar to yours that didn't do well, they won't buy your book. If they can't figure out how to market it, they won't offer you a contract. There's so many things that go into it because they're a business, they want to make money. And if they can't figure out how to sell your book, you're not going to get offered a contract. So learn all you can about publishing, know how subjective it is, don't take it personally. You have to be the biggest cheerleader for your work and you just have to keep moving forward.
Yes, love yourself, people. So let's go to the industry and future of writing. How do you see the publishing industry evolving for future best-selling and award-winning authors?
I see it evolving more towards because there are a lot of self-published authors that are really doing very well. And because they're doing very well, I think traditional publishing is sitting up and taking notice and they're trying to emulate what self-publishers are doing. And what self-publishers are doing is they're cutting out the middleman. They're selling direct to the readers. And I think that's going to grow even more. I also think social media allies um, publishing, allying themselves with social media like TikTok and Instagram to push books. I think that's going to grow too. As much as I hate to say it because there are aspects of it that I just don't like, I think AI is probably going to
Yes.
be another big thing in publishing.
So do you think self-published authors have their fair chance at achieving literary success?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, traditional publishers, they don't really speak directly to the readers. They're trying to sell to bookstores and libraries and those kinds of places. They aren't as good about connecting directly to the reader that self-publishing authors can do.
Definitely. So, Miss Angela, what would be your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
Um, just to keep writing in the genres that I'm writing. I don't know about branching out to other genres. I might do that. I would love to see uh, my work adapted for the big screen or the small screen. I would love that. I'd like to start writing screenplays and just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yes, and go for it. How important is adaptability in writing world, especially with the changing trends and digital media?
Um, I think I think there's a lot of pressure on authors, especially when it comes to social media, to just be kind of everywhere. And I think if you just pick a couple of places to focus on, like with your marketing, um, your writing is going to be the most important thing. But if you just pick maybe a couple of places to focus on for your marketing, I think, you can do really well.
Certainly. So, Miss Angela, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, in its fifth season, people, fifth season with Chef Alessandro, one of his specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. Please do listen to our latest episode. We are reading our letter senders all over the world. So, Miss Angela, how do you hope your books and achievements will contribute to the literary world?
Well, when I first started, there weren't a lot of African American mystery and thriller writers, and I'm happy to say that that's changing. There are more and more now, and I just hope that my books can contribute to that and people can see themselves in my books and just continue to enjoy them.
Definitely enjoy them and looking forward for more and more and more award-winning and best-selling books. So, Miss Angela, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Please support my books. You can find them on Amazon, and you can find out more information about me and my books at angelahenry.com.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Angela Henry because if you support her, as I said, more and more award winning and best selling novels to come. So, Miss Angela, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.